Even when you're actively healing PTSD from childhood, there are trauma patterns that seem to come out of nowhere that can make you very fragile at times. One day you feel like you're good, you're full of energy and ambition, and you're focused and working hard. And then the next day you might be like, hey, why don't I step up a little here? And you take on something new, or you put yourself out there in a new way. And then bam, you do what my friend Ken in Australia calls crashing. It's a thing trauma survivors do, like a cycle or a wave pattern. Have you ever had that where you're going up, 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 and you're doing good and you're keeping busy, and then you withdraw? And it's not depression per se that I'm talking about here. It's more like going into a shell. Now, is it bad? It can be very bad, totally destructive, but I don't think it has to be. I'm Anna Runkle, also known as the Crappy Childhood Fairy, and I teach people how to heal from the effects of childhood trauma and how to set up your life so that you can calm PTSD triggers and build a sustainable way of life that makes you happy. So here's the letter from Ken. He writes, hey Anna, I'm a big fan of yours from Australia, and I have a question for you that I'd love to see answered on your YouTube channel. Dun, dun, dun. So here we are. He says, this is in regards to what I call crashing. Every time I get ahead in life with anything at all, even if it's just for a few months or weeks or days, I crash and I lose all momentum. And by crashing, I mean I lose all drive and motivation, and I end up spending a day or two in bed, leaving me feeling run over and exhausted. And then it takes a day or two to get up to speed with adjusting my sleeping, eating, and routine pattern. Sometimes these crashes mean that I can fall behind on bills and commitments, and this bad habit has held me back from doing what I really want in life in regard to work, love, friendship, and, well, everything. Please help. Ken, I totally know what you're talking about, and I love your word for it, crashing. I also crash. It used to be much worse than it is now, like it's really tempered now, but it's still very cyclical for me. And I've noticed a lot of people with CPTSD are like this, to the point that I think it might be a CPTSD thing. We work in bursts. So that might not be true for everybody out there, but I'm going to talk about this common trait. We work in bursts, meaning we hunker down and focus for a period of time, maybe days. If you're lucky, maybe it's weeks or months. So let's call that state humming along. And then usually following a big step that you take because you have some confidence, because you've been humming along, then you crash. And crashes don't always look like anything on the outside, but they are something. And what it feels like it's a terrible countervailing force that just comes to pull you back down when you're starting to get somewhere, when you're getting a little too free, a little too real. And it almost seems like CPTSD has claws and reaches in and tries to just pull you back to where it thinks that you're safe. So like you get a promotion, you feel guilty. You lose some weight, you gain it back. You get a little money, you waste it, and so on. CPTSD feels uncomfortable when you ascend to a new level. Now, crashes aren't always devastating or life-destroying. It's usually more like a period of sleepiness or laziness or resentment or resistance. That's what it feels like in the moment. It doesn't look like any big thing necessarily, but you might stop going to work, but usually you keep going to work. You keep going to the things you go to, but you're totally hiding. You're doing covert avoidance, right? If you're not trying to do anything big in your life, you can do this hiding thing pretty well, right, in plain sight. But if you're trying to do something big and there are commitments involved and people are counting on you and you're crashing, well, you could muddle along, but you just don't get liftoff. You know, if you were, trying to work in a new career, it just wouldn't take root if you were crashing the whole time. Or another thing that happens is you make a start, but you can't get it done, or you never start. And because it's cyclical, eventually you'll be able to get on top of things in some way, or you'll get the urge to try a new thing, maybe months or years later when things have been going well for a little while and you've got some momentum going. And then you put yourself out there, and here it comes, bam, the crash cycle begins again. And so there are hard crashes, and then there are like little crashes, which can be just as destructive to anything real and true that you're trying to create in your life. For me, it happened when I wrote my first book and when I made my first film. And on both of those things, I actually did really well for a newcomer in both of those areas. And people I respected who were like advanced in these fields encouraged me for real, like, you should keep doing this. That was a good start. And, but it was hard work, and it involved a lot of putting myself out there and even getting criticized sometimes in a public way. And that made me feel exposed. So I remember after the film that I made, a woman friend who had participated at a couple of the shoots as an extra was talking to me. And this was after the film was made. We had had a screening party. It was this, it was a really good little film. It was funny, and everybody in it and their families came to the screening party. And the film won an award, and I was over the moon with the accomplishment. And this had all been done in my spare time while I held down a day job. I was an admin assistant at a hospital. And so anyway, this woman friend who was in the movie, we were hanging out, and I just said, gosh, I'm just so excited for the first time in my life. I feel like I was really like using all my skills. She goes, oh, well, you really sucked. Where was she coming from? I can only even guess. She said, you were awful. Everything that you did, you were just, you were bitchy and you were dictatorial, and it wasn't just me, like everybody thought so. That is like that's the telltale like thing that bad people do, right? It's like, it's not just me, everyone thinks so. So I cried. I sort of melted down there, but I had a little bit of strength in me. And that night I like called everybody who had been in the film, and I was like, was it so bad? This person said it was so bad and that I was awful. Was I mean? Was I bad? And like everyone said, and of course people will sometimes tell you what you want to hear, but they said it in a way I believe them. It was great. I had a really good time. You were fine. It was fine. It was actually really fun. I would do it again. So I knew it was this woman's issue. I could have confronted her. I could have ignored her. I could have moved on, right? So what did I do? I gave up. I crashed. I crashed. I learned so much from making that first film. And instead of taking all that learning and fun and making another film, I turned against myself. And even though 12 people had told me good feedback, this one person's bad feedback, I just turned against myself. And I kept just being an admin assistant. And instead of writing scripts and setting up shoots with my friends on weekends, I just fell back into watching TV at night. And for years this happened. And it happened with my book too. The book did well. And I started getting all these invitations to speak and be on radio shows and to write columns. This was 8 years later or something. And at the time I had a boss who took me aside one day and told me that the president of the whole organization, who was his boss, had spoken to him and said that me writing and publishing was a conflict of interest, and that if I wanted to keep my job, I'd have to stop. And I remember my heart was just pounding, like I couldn't afford to lose my job at all. And he said, he was so sorry. If it were up to him, he'd let me do it. But the president of the organization really didn't want me to do it. And so, I'd have to stop for the sake of all of us. So I was very upset. But again, I had a little bit of strength left. And you know what I did? I didn't fold right away. I called the president of the organization. And I'd never met her before. But you know what? You can usually do that. And I called her up and I explained who I was. And I asked her, did you say that I couldn't write and publish, that it was a conflict of interest? I'd like to understand that better. And she's like, what? No, she did know about my book. She thought it was fabulous. In fact, she went on to endorse it. She had never said that. And I was so mad. I was burning with rage and I wanted to go back to this boss, right? But it was devastating to me to realize that she never said that it was my boss. And I just couldn't believe that after those years of working together, that he would be so sneaky and dishonest and such an a-hole, to do that. So what did I do? Did I go back to him and say, hey, you told me that your boss said I couldn't publish again or I'd get fired? But that's not true. Did I say that? No. What did I do? I said nothing. I crashed. I crashed. And I kept working for him for years with my mouth shut. I was kind of resentful the whole time, but I never said a word. And I still never have. Maybe he'll watch this. You know who you are. I didn't speak up and I didn't write another book for many years, not until now. And I'm writing a book now, so yay. But that was like 1998 when I got silenced. It's 2021. That's how long it took. Actually, I would count my coming back into being free to write in 2016. That's when I started Crappy Childhood Fairy, and the blog and the YouTube channel. That counts, all right? That counts as me being free and expressing myself. So yay, all right? 18 years I was doing something else. I had some kids, I started a business, but I was not doing what I knew I was meant to be doing. I felt guilty, I felt frustrated every single day until I started that blog. And then life opened up like the heavens. It started just feeling really good. So what happened? I learned to modulate my crashes. That means make them not so intense. Now, if you're a person who crashes, who falls off your game from time to time, and it's a level that's really taking away from the quality of your life and your sense of freedom and confidence to pursue what you really want to be doing, I want to tell you how to modulate your crashes. It's very similar to a lot of things that go with CPTSD, and I'll tell you why I think so. Notice that crashing looks a lot like brain dysregulation. And if you know that, I make a lot of videos about dysregulation. I have a whole playlist about it if you want to look into it. It's something that happens to people who are traumatized. So here are some characteristics that are similar to dysregulation, is that crashing gets triggered. You don't always notice it at first necessarily until it's actually done some damage. It distorts your perception and makes you really vulnerable to discouragement and criticism. It comes along with a physiological state, and sometimes that feels like agitation, but more often, for me anyway, it feels like torpor. You know what torpor is? It's like a dullness. It's also full of self-attack, and unlike self-criticism that's constructive, self-attack does not help. It's not constructive. Another similarity between crashing and dysregulation is you think that someone's doing this to you, but even when they go along with you on this premise and they try to fix it, it doesn't do anything. So that's how you know it's internal. And the reason they're so similar, I think, is because crashing, like dysregulation, is a brain state. There is a little well of despair deep down inside everybody who was traumatized as a kid. And it's there just vibrating sometimes like a little thing of jello inside. And it colors everything you see. It makes you think, when it's activated, that your efforts are just all a waste. It makes you think your talent is crap, that nobody cares about you or wants to read your book or watch your movie or eat the dinner you made or be your boyfriend or girlfriend or whatever terrible thought your mind fills in there when you put yourself out there and get met with discouragement, right? Jello vibration. It's so important when you realize that you're in a brain state like that to stop beating yourself up. Because you might think that you need to push yourself forward with self-criticism, but actually it only makes it worse, right? So what you want to do instead is take actions that help you support your brain. So here's how you can do that. One is you can develop routines. Ken mentioned this, that he would spend a couple days using sleep, food, exercise to bring himself back from a crashing state. Our brains love routines, and they find them relaxing, especially when trauma's made things kind of chaotic and you tend to get dysregulated. Routines just feel good. You know, you're just kind of like, you're on the railroad tracks. It feels good. It's hard sometimes to stick with routines, but you're going to need to keep accepting that and embracing the fact that you're making an effort anyway. It can take time to get consistent. We're after consistency here. So anything that drains your energy is putting you at risk for a crash. If you go long spells without eating, like that would never happen to me, but if you do, it drains your energy and it puts you at risk for a crash, all right? You want to stay consistently nourished. Do you stay up all night and then sleep all day and then the next day do a different schedule? That's going to set you up for a crash. If you tend to lose your temper, if you're a people pleaser, if you tend to get into quick relationships or drink a lot, all of those things can mess up that gentle routine that your brain loves and set you up for a crash. Now, you don't have to be boring and you don't have to live like a nun. It's good to live your life and do new things sometimes, but you want overall to keep things within the parameters so that you don't get drained. You don't want to drain all your inner resources out. When you're emotionally or physically exhausted, your mind starts to play tricks on you, and CPTSD begins to blossom, and out comes the self-sabotage right when things are hard, right when a new job brings a challenge in front of you. If you have a well, an inner well, a resource well, and it's full, you can get through these challenges. But if you're already drained from a bunch of crazy stuff happening in your life, you're going to want to find an excuse to withdraw. You'll have to. You might call in sick, or fall into resentment, or check out in some way, or believe that you're helpless and hopeless, and you lash out and you give up and you tell stories about how this is all being done to you by terrible people, and you disappear. So who gains? Who wins? Not you. So we don't want those big swings here. Remember, you have CPTSD, and in a way, it's kind of like having diabetes where, yeah, you have it, but if you take care of it and you follow a way of life that supports you, you can keep it under control and maybe even reverse it. And that's similar to crashing. Diabetics take insulin in the same way. You might need to do the things that keep you balanced and resilient and able to handle hard things, risks, criticisms, little embarrassments. The things that would keep you balanced are the sleep, the decent diet, support from friends. Don't skimp on that one. Hardly anything works when you try it in isolation. You can learn to calm the triggers that tend to set off the crash by becoming aware of them and learning to discharge the fearful and resentful thinking that constitutes a trigger, that clouds your thinking when you're crashing. And in fact, with the daily practice techniques that I teach you, you can calm those thoughts proactively. You don't have to be having them at the time. You can work on keeping your brain in that nice calm state that works for you, just becoming a little more attentive each day. And the free course I teach on how to do that, it's always there. I'm always talking about it. There are links in the description section down below, and that is the section right under the video. You usually have to click a little more link right there. You see some lines of text. Click more, it'll open up a whole bunch of links, and that's where you'll find all my stuff.
Have you ever had the experience where you should do something like go to work on time or get ready for an important meeting or just brush your teeth before bed, but you just couldn't do it? I'm Anna Runkle, also known as the Crappy Childhood Fairy. And everybody procrastinates sometimes. But for people who experienced abuse and neglect in childhood, procrastinating can morph into a paralysis of sorts. I've had this happen. I've spent whole seasons in this place before. And I'll tell you, it is so demoralizing when it's happening to know that you're here in this world to do something good, but something in you is not letting you do it. So what is that? And how can we change? In this video, which is part of my series on resilience for people with childhood PTSD, I want to talk about one of the strengths that helps us overcome the big obstacles that can hold us back. And in this video, the obstacle we're looking at is paralysis. We literally find ourselves unable to take positive action on our own behalf, both in little day-to-day things and in big matters affecting our whole life path. So what's going on when we can't act? Honestly, I think that doing things, committing ourselves, spending energy, creating something out of nothing, it's hard. I love sharing videos with you, but the week before I shoot them each month, I'm dying of avoidance because making these videos takes days of preparation, probably about 6 to 8 hours of focused creative work for each video. And when it's time to plan the content, oh my gosh, I suddenly just get so interested in balancing my checkbook and cleaning my sandals and buying some new hair clips online. And it makes no sense because releasing these videos is the great joy of my life, but doing the work that leads up to that moment is hard. For people with childhood PTSD, especially when there's a lot of unhealed stuff, you're in a state of stress pretty much all the time, everything is hard. And people who don't have childhood PTSD have no idea how much work it is for some of us just to do ordinary things. It's exhausting and it's stressful. People are hard. Sticking to a schedule is hard. Expressing yourself is hard. Making money is hard. But you know what's harder? Not doing these things. And that's why I don't recommend you make a big accommodation for yourself and tell yourself that the solution is to just avoid everything that's stressful for you. Because in the end, the path of least resistance is to do these things anyway. That's how they get easier, and that's how you get happier. Okay, if you have childhood PTSD, maybe it doesn't make sense to just run out there and go for it and force yourself to do everything at once. Maybe it's just a little at a time. But I'll tell you what the solution is not. The solution is not to give up on yourself. Don't identify with the trauma and mistake paralysis for self-care. Your strength lies in action taken in right proportion to your capacity. Don't wait until it feels right for you to start brushing your teeth. Just take that one step and do it, even when you're tired, just for practice, just to stretch yourself. And then the next day, I don't know, clean the kitchen. You know the good actions that you need to be taking next. You may have to push yourself, not like a maniac, but you might have to push yourself some every day. You know that saying you hear sometimes about not being a human doing, but being a human being? Well, it's a good sentiment, but doing and being are both really important. And doing is how we earn a living, and it's how we express ourselves. How are you going to become fully yourself if you don't do things? The more I heal, the more there's things I want to do. Like creating Crappy Childhood Fairy was on my mind for 20 years before I had the inner power to do it. And I'm so glad I did. It's a lot of work on nights and weekends, and I'll tell you, part of me would really rather be watching Netflix. Really, I love this era of great television and streaming shows, and it bums me out that I can't watch more of it. But I'd be even more unhappy if I knew that I could be the Crappy Childhood Fairy, but I didn't make the effort. And that is what it feels like to have life pass you by. So I take action, and I encourage you to take action too. Like all the strengths in my Resilience series, action is something that you can begin immediately and do a little every day. Big bursts of action, they're nice, but even better are small, consistent actions. They get you there too, but they give you just a little breather between actions so that you can equilibrate, you can balance yourself out and handle the stress that life gives you every time you put yourself out there with action. Small actions taken consistently are like super vitamins for childhood PTSD. If you were constrained from letting your light shine in your life, your spirit is going to love this. You're getting somewhere, and accomplishment feels really good. When we keep taking small actions every day, adventure follows. You may or may not reach the goal. You may not even want the goal in the end, but the act of taking small steps towards it will increase your feeling of being alive and open up your life to all kinds of unexpected connections and possibilities. You're in the game. You're open for business. Your strength is action.
When a big challenge shows up in your life, like a big test is coming up in 2 days, or you find out you owe a whole bunch of money that you don't have, or just that there's a bad smell in your refrigerator, are you the kind of person who drops everything and finds a solution and exhausts yourself handling it all by yourself? Or are you the kind of person who gets overwhelmed and goes into avoidance, struggling to take any action at all? These two states at other two ends of the continuum are stress responses called overfunctioning and underfunctioning. And they're both common with people who grew up with trauma, and they each have destructive, if slightly different, consequences. So my letter today is from a woman I'll call Gemma, and she writes, "Dear Anna, can you please make a video about struggling to grow up and become an independent adult? I still feel like I'm a little girl, most likely due to childhood trauma, and I struggle to work, pay bills, stick to a schedule, and take care of myself. I have this fear that I won't be able to make it on my own, and I need someone to take care of me and do things for me." All right, I've got my fairy pencil, and I'm circling things I want to come back to. I'm going to read through this letter. Let's see what Gemma's got to say, and then I'll go back to what I circled. All right. "Here's a little background about me, if it helps," she says. "My parents divorced when I was 6. My dad displays all the narcissistic traits listed in the DSM-5, but he hasn't been diagnosed with anything because he refuses to seek professional help and says everyone else is the problem. He drinks heavily, criticizes and demeans others, cheated on my mom throughout their entire marriage, and he was in and out of jail for domestic violence. Oof. He would threaten to kill my mom and kill himself right in front of us kids, and it really impacted my siblings and me, especially my older brother, who became an alcoholic and took his own life a couple years ago. He was 29. His mother aka my grandma, sexually abused me from the time I was 6 up, and she died when I was 13. When I told my dad what happened, he called me a bitch and a liar. My mother considers herself a spiritual empath and healer. She was an abused and neglected foster care kid, so I think that's why she has poor boundaries and taught me to love toxic people unconditionally and forgive them no matter what they've done. My mom would use me as her therapist and overshare things with me that were extremely inappropriate for me to hear about at such a young age. I found myself needing to grow up quickly to take care of her because my little brother got taken into state custody, and my mom was having many nervous breakdowns and escaped into this fantasy world where she believed that this famous actor, it's named here, but I won't do it because it's just for anonymity's sake, that he was her twin flame and was going to come rescue her. She lost her job, and we ended up homeless a couple times. I started working while still going to school in order to get out of the homeless shelter. I was paying all the bills in high school and provided for my mom financially, which led to resentment. I realized I never got to be a kid. My mom was too poor to buy me toys for Christmas and my birthday, so I went without. I struggled to connect with kids at school and was bullied a lot, so I felt alone and misunderstood. I've attracted romantic partners that remind me of my abusive father, and I'm trying so hard to heal the little girl inside of me. Thank you for your time and energy, she says. Gemma. Oh, Gemma. I love you so much. I'm so sorry this happened to you. Your first question about how to grow up is you're growing up just fine. You grew up early. It's true you didn't get to have that experience of being a kid. You were a kid. I have kind of a different take on this. You were a kid. You were a kid who had to take on a lot of responsibility. I mean, making money, supporting your mom financially in high school, being her therapist, dealing with the incredible uncertainty of her and your dad. That is so much responsibility. And, people amaze me. You amaze me that you were able to do that. And here you are. Here you are. You lost your brother, but you're here. You're here and you are making a decision. I want to grow up. I want to be able to handle my life. What I think, I'm not trying to invalidate you, but here's a perspective. When you talk about not being able to pay bills, what was it? Work, pay bills, stick to a schedule, and take care of yourself. I don't think you failed to grow up. I think you might just have dysregulation. I think those are all things, dysregulation and a trauma response of freeze. Freeze does that, where it's just like you can't move. Certain things like pressure comes, anything stressful happens, you kind of go, ugh. Everybody has their sort of go-to trauma response. Some people are fighters like your dad. Some people are fleers like your brother, escape, right? Some people fawn. Your mother has gone into magical thinking. And you're a person who gets busy and deals with problems. And you do that, but there's something in you fighting it. Because anybody who could support a family in high school, that's just like not easy to do. And I would imagine you probably had to do a lot of covering up and protecting of your mother for her to not lose custody of you, right? Holy cow. Clearly she's mentally ill. That's very sad. It's very sad. Her delusional beliefs, the whole thing, the spiritual empath and healer, that is an identity that can attract people who are engaged in deep magical thinking. And here, I practice Stoicism basically, and I want to present to you a Stoic picture of this, because when and if you've gone to therapy, they may have talked about your inner child, the little girl in there, and if that's what you are connected to, you totally, yes, do that. As somebody who has a somewhat Stoic approach, not on purpose, I retroactively figured out that's the word, but sometimes I've just been a very practical person, and I just say, I had to do a lot. I had a lot of responsibility as a kid, like way over my head when I was little. I wouldn't even compare myself to you, but there were some things. And the thing that's helped me is to just try to stay in reality and just say, yes, all that's true. And I had an opportunity to talk about it. I had therapy. Maybe it was helpful to talk about that stuff. I think in the beginning it was validating, but the thing is, the therapist, the first few that I ever ended up with, I often felt like my tragedies were a little bit like porn or something to them, that they were just like, oh yeah, tell me more. And they would want to talk about that. And everything in my life has been because I was able to move my focus off of what happened, acknowledge it. Yes, I'm not trying to be in denial, but I do not believe that for all of us, certainly not me, that talking about it produces healing. It's a stage. It's a stage to admit it to somebody and to get somebody with perspective to go, oh, there's a word for that. That's abuse. That's da da da. There's a common pattern that shows up in people who experience that. That's very helpful. But then there needs to be a solution. And what you're doing here when you're talking about wanting to work and pay bills, that's my theme right now. I sing the praises of work. Work is a way that brings stability, choices, prosperity, connection. There are many good things that come from work. So if you can't do it right now, yeah, there's a lot of suffering and there's guilt and shame and all that. But I first just want to validate for you, it's very understandable that you're freezing up around this stuff. You didn't tell me how old you were. I have the impression that you're youngish. And because your brother was 29 a couple years ago, so you're somewhere in that vicinity. Working is important, but your trauma is upon you right now. And your mother, I guess, is still alive and still doing all this stuff. And you're visiting, you're exploring like what happened here and kind of reckoning, wow, your mom is like delusional. I can't hear that there's anybody you've ever been able to count on for security. And that's hard, but what it comes down to, like some people, they will try to rush into relationships, and a few people will get lucky, and the way they are and who they meet, they find somebody who's totally stable for them, and they're in love and they stay stable in a marriage from there on out. That happens. But if it hasn't happened to you, and that's not how it happened for me, I had to learn to be that person for myself. And being that person for myself all by myself is not healthy, but being that person for myself while also taking reasonable actions to have a community and some support around me, that has hit the sweet spot. That has enabled me because, really nothing else would ever make me feel secure except for knowing that if things get crazy again in my life, I'll know what to do. That is my ultimate security and safety. If it gets bad like that, I'll know what to do. And I know what to do from experience, having to do stuff, having to deal, I just remember when I was in college, I didn't have financial support. I barely had any financial aid. I just did not have enough to live on. I was living in this horrible apartment where there was some very bad landlord stuff going on. And I had a roommate. We were packed into this little apartment. And I had a job at a sandwich shop. And the sandwich shop was a real horrible place to work. The people who ran it were mean. They were rude to me. It was money, right? I needed some money. And I worked there 15 hours a week and went to class and made this little amount of money. And I barely had enough to eat. I had one pair of shoes, one coat. Oh, here I go. I'm one of those people. Oh, yeah, the old days. But I'm just telling you this because it ended up being one of the finest experiences in my life. Is I had just a little bit of money, just enough to get by. And I had to eat French toast with like cheap bread, eggs, milk, margarine. I had that like every day for dinner. And then I worked at a pizza place, and so I ate a lot of pizza. And whatever I could get there, like I pieced it together like so many people do, like so many people are doing right now. You piece it together. Occasionally people come in and help. A family member gave me a job helping care for some old people at their home, which was like a huge step up in my life back then. But when I was at the pizza stage and, trying to get to school and have enough to eat, I used to buy these boxes of like hot cocoa in the little envelopes, and I got it on sale. It was like the cheap generic kind. And I would let myself have one packet at the end of the day. The sandwich job was physically taxing, and especially I was in school full time, and it was a lot of like walking around, and I had to break down the boxes and mop and all that stuff. So I would get home like sweaty and exhausted and smelling like disinfectant in the sandwich fridge. Many people have had this kind of job. I'd take a shower and I would eat my French toast. Or maybe I didn't have French toast on sandwich days. It was the other days. So I'd had a sandwich, and then I'd have one little packet of this cheap generic hot cocoa, and it was delicious, and it was like my special time. And I think this was a formative time. And the reason I was in this situation in that job is I had been in a 2.5-year relationship with a guy who I thought I was going to marry, and he just was having an affair with somebody very close to us, and for like months under my nose. And it was heartbreaking. And I was 21. And I thought I was going to really like go over the ledge of just like heartbreak, and I give up and I can't do this. And having that job and going to school, I got very serious. I did well at school. And it was that little packet of hot chocolate at the end of the day that I was like, I did it. I did it for another day. I was stoic. I was going through hard times. I used to carry so much stress in my body because I had CPTSD, but who knew back then? This is a long time ago. But I was always like on the verge of having a terrible ulcer. I had terrible stomach problems. And I had a hard time eating, actually, because my stomach was in pain so much of the time. I was really carrying the stress. I smoked cigarettes as much as I could afford to smoke cigarettes. I was really on the edge. And so it was a turning point for me to be able to take care of myself, to make ends meet, just to make ends meet, even though they were tiny ends. I had this pair of Vans and they were ripped. I had this coat that I got from a thrift store, and that was it. And when it was raining, like my shoes and my coat would get all wet. And I would have to have all these measures to try to get it near the oven, not light it on fire, so it would be dry in the morning. I did a lot of trudging in cold rain. It was a tough year. And it wasn't the only tough period like that I've ever had. I've had like 4 or 5 periods of my life where I was really like kind of at the edge of being able to deal. And at each time, in the little measures where I got through it, I made it, I changed. When I look back, I would say these are the periods when I grew the most, when I overcame my trauma the most. And I think this experience of self-determination are so powerful for healing and underrated. It's not all about talking about what happened. It's about getting on our feet and being able to do that. Now, at that stage, I had so much work to do in order to learn how to have relationships that weren't completely colored and driven by the traumatic parenting that I'd experienced in the past. And I would expect you have a road in front of you too. But it's a road that you can walk safely and without ruining your life if you dare, if you can seek out mentorship and community from people around you. So your dad was an alcoholic. You qualify for Al-Anon. I cannot say enough good things about how good it is, how much I wish I had found Al-Anon sooner in my life. I wasn't ready. I think I did know about it, but I was only ready when I was ready. But when you can go to a meeting any night and be with people who understand, and you can be yourself, and you can sit there in your wet coat and your wet shoes and your backpack, and you're craving for cigarettes that you can't afford, and your stomach ache, you have a place to go. And then you have this thing like the 12-step process to start moving through all the troubles and make sense of your life and have companions along the way. You are living large. So many people are living in isolation and they don't have that. I really encourage you, avail yourself of that community. You can get through a lot when you're with people who understand, who are also working on themselves. And then you need tools. If you go to a 12-step program, I encourage you, look for the very strongest sponsor in the room, even though it intimidates you, and ask her if she will sponsor you. That's my suggestion. You can also, in addition to that, or all by itself, come be in our program, take the daily practice course I teach. Those are the techniques that got me through one of the darkest periods of my life, and I just keep doing them. I just did them about an hour ago. I did my second one for the day because it recharges me. I taped 6 videos today. This is the 6th one. It takes a lot of energy to do this. And if I write and meditate using my daily practice techniques, not only do I just have less trauma overall, and it's like rinsing the trauma off of you twice a day, open up a way for fresh thoughts and fresh feelings. I might, if you haven't heard me talk about this, it may sound strange. You can learn all about it. I have a free course. It's on the free tools page of my website, crappychildhoodfairy.com, free tools. The link is also down below in the description section. You have to click the, read more, the button that opens up the whole description section. I got it all there. I got stuff for you. It's free. Free is good. And I have paid things too, but the very most important thing I teach is this daily practice. And it's a way to, without fanfare, take all that drama inside and get it on paper and rest in meditation. And it's something you manage. You don't have to wait for somebody else to give you the healing. You don't have to come up with any money for it. You You just have a tool at your fingertips. You take paper and pen with you in your backpack or purse always. And there's always a place for your feelings to go. That is safety. That is freedom. That's why I feel like, all right, I know that hard things are going to happen in my life again one day, but when it does, I'll know what to do. I'll figure it out. That's what safety is. That's what confidence is. That's what self-esteem is, really, is knowing that you'll be able to figure it out. So I'm proud of you. I just see that you have figured out a lot. You figured things out at a very young age, and there's all kinds of like trauma wounds happening right now, you know, popping around like popcorn in the way your life is playing out. But you can start right now to create a door where all that stuff can go out and a new experience can come in. Think of it like a delayed development. You didn't get to learn all the stuff that parents were supposed to teach you. And there is so much time to have fun, by the way, so much time to have fun in your life. A lot of fun is available, a lot of friendship, a lot of learning and going to school, like a lot of the things you missed. There will never be a childhood again. But a lot of the things you missed, you can have. You can have them. The trauma gets in the way. So priority number one, heal the symptoms of trauma. That will in turn help direct your love life in a better way. If you can, come into my course on dating, you know, just if that's something that's out there for you, because with your background, you probably have to take conscious action to direct your love life into a good direction, a positive direction that's in your best interest. Because what we do is what we do. We tend to recreate the pattern that happened before. And you could end up with somebody who's a magical thinker, not reliable, an alcoholic, abusive. That would be likely. So I'm just saying, like, so good to get help, you know, whatever it is. Therapy, most people can't afford that, but therapy, membership in Crappy Childhood Fairy, or a course, free course, 12-step programs, also free. I really encourage you to avail yourself of these things. Like, if I could do my life over again, all I would have done differently is get into that stuff earlier. It's made all the difference, and it solved the problem of loneliness. My 12-step life solved the problem of loneliness. And when you have people who you can always hang out with, you never have to rush into a relationship. I mean, think about it. Like, everything bad I've ever done was driven by loneliness. What about you? Right? So when you don't have healthy friends in your life, you can create an environment like that by dropping into a 12-step program. That's who it's for. If you're watching this, you know, if anybody out there, if your problem is drinking, AA, so powerful. I don't have that one, but I would definitely, like, I love AA. It's great. I go to open meetings sometimes. If it wasn't alcohol in your parents, but everything was all dysfunctional, ACA, Adult Children of Alcoholics and Other Dysfunctional Families. If money is the main locus of problems, Debtors Anonymous. If relationships are the main locus of problems, Sex and Love Addicts Anonymous. There's a number of 12-step programs. I'm not listing them all, but just saying, you know, there's one for everybody. And maybe it's not for you, but I really encourage you to check it out, because I know of nothing else that has like an instant community for anybody who's ready to show up and get in there and start trying to heal. So I love you for trying. Thank you so much for writing. I'm proud of you. I know you can do this. And you have here at Crappy Childhood Fairy a community of people who are 100% behind you. And I would really like to ask the commenters to be loving and kind and supportive toward Gemma. You know, what a good woman you are. So we're behind you. And if anybody here feels like their trauma has affected their lives, if giving you CPTSD made it hard for you to get going in your life, take my CPTSD quiz. This quiz has been taken by thousands of people, and in it I list a whole series of common symptoms that happens. You know, you may not be able to get a diagnosis from a professional. It's not even recognized in the United States, but I list the common symptoms. And you can check the box and just see, do you have these? And you can self-identify. If you have the symptoms, I don't care what you call it, you belong here. So that quiz, it's the Childhood PTSD quiz. It is on my website on the free tools page, and it's linked. That free tools page is linked down below in the description section too. I have a series of quizzes there you can take. And I recommend them. They often are the first step for you to find out, like, oh my gosh, this is a thing. It's not my fault. I'm normal. I'm having normal symptoms that follow when people have been through abnormal experiences, as I have. Have you ever had the experience where you know you should do something like go to work on time or get ready for an important meeting or just brush your teeth before bed, but you just couldn't do it? Everybody procrastinates sometimes, but for people who experienced abuse and neglect in childhood, procrastinating can morph into a paralysis of sorts. I've had this happen. I've spent whole seasons in this place before, and I'll tell you, it is so demoralizing when it's happening to know that you're in the world to do good, but something in you is not letting you do it. So what is that? And how can you change? This is the third video in a series of 3 I'm releasing this week to talk about the surprising way that what you eat can not only drag you down physically, but it can influence your cognitive abilities, your ability to learn. It can influence your mood for better or for worse, and it can influence your energy level, specifically your energy and enthusiasm and willingness to take action in your life. When those are lacking, what you experience is procrastination. When you break through procrastination, your life gains purpose and order and momentum. And these are exactly what you need to overcome bad things that happen in your past. That's what you need. And to get busy becoming all you're meant to be. So I want to highlight that connection, that what you eat can influence what you do and what you can envision for yourself and whether you have the power inside yourself to keep moving forward on that. So eating badly, for me, and for a lot of people who are neglected and abused as kids, usually means overeating on highly processed and specifically sugary and high carbohydrate foods like 3 bowls of cereal at night or 8 pieces of toast in the morning with jam or giant bowls of pasta. This kind of eating is comforting at first, and then it's exhausting, and then it's depressing. It is. And whatever's going on in your circumstances and your personality that's leading you to procrastinate, a bad diet has a way of locking you into it. Not always, but ask yourself, when you've been the most unable to take action on your behalf, your own behalf, when you felt the most stuck and paralyzed and missed out on opportunities and relationships because of procrastination, was part of the problem that you felt lethargic all the time? And if so, was the food you were eating part of the reason? It's weird, right? Now that I eat lightly, my meals give me energy. When I was overeating, my meals made me unable to move forward. I'd have to sleep afterwards sometimes. Not only physically did I not want to move, but mentally trying to get anything done sounded just like hard and chaotic and uncomfortable. And yet when you're stuck, the one thing that needs to happen is that you take action. And until you do, the lethargy and depression will only sink down harder on you. So in the past year, I realized that all the years where I thought I overate because I was stressed or tired or feeling down, I realized that most of the time I was stressed and tired and feeling down because I'd overeaten. Now, of course, life problems and world problems are sometimes the reason why I have those feelings, but it still always benefits me to have a clear head and a good baseline of emotional steadiness. And I get that from the way I eat. Now, I knew that food and mood went together, but I just had the cause and effect turned around. And the way this was made clear to me was because I changed the way I eat, and I stopped eating sugary, floury foods that used to, full of flour, baked goods, that kind of thing, that used to be my favorite go-to cure-all when things got hard. It felt like they steadied me. And when I followed a healthier way of eating, within just a few weeks, I just didn't get as stressed and I didn't get as tired, and my mood was just better and more evenly, even throughout the day, energy, mood, all of it, just more even. And I realized that all that time I was eating that stuff, I was procrastinating. They really do go together. I still procrastinate sometimes. I'm human. But so I follow this food plan. It's called Bright Line Eating. And I've been talking about it in a few videos this week because it turns out that it's one of just a small handful of things I've personally benefited from that's helped me with my CPTSD symptoms. I know there's a lot of things out there. I'm not saying this food plan is for everybody, but this week I want to, be more open and tell you what this experience has been for me, because if you're like me, it's quite possible you would get the same good benefits, and I think it's worth a try. So I first started on Bright Line Eating about 5 years ago when I first learned about it, and I did it to lose weight. I did lose weight too. I lost 40 pounds. And it was great. It was such a relief. I could just wear one size of clothes. I could put away the 4 other sizes of clothes that I keep stored in all these boxes with a weight number written on them for different sizes as my weight's gone up and down, because I never really had a way to eat that was reliable to just be one good right-sized weight. And after that major weight loss, it didn't happen at first. It took a little while, but gradually I just abandoned the program. I felt like, okay, I lost the weight. Now I want to go back to eat normally, what I considered normally. It is normal. It's common. Lots of people eat that way, but it really doesn't actually suit my body. It doesn't suit me. So I gradually gained the weight back. First, 75% of it. The pandemic took it all the way back to all of it back. I've actually heard that just 1% of people who try to lose weight on any given year are actually going to lose it and keep it off long term. 1%. So there's no shame in being part of the other 99%. It's common and normal. So I was hoping that I could just get to that size I wanted and go back to eating. Now that I'm in my 50s, my body can't handle that. So I always equated dieting with, a temporary food restriction, and then you get how you want to look. And of course, I would love to look, tall and thin and gorgeous all the time. But even more than that, at this point in my life, I want energy and presence and confidence so that I can do my life. My life has more opportunity in it than I've ever had before. I love doing Crappy Childhood Fairy. I want to bring to it the very best of myself that I can. I mean that. I want to change the way the world understands childhood trauma, and I want everyone who treats trauma to understand what it's actually like and what helps us and how we heal. And most of all, I want everybody who has CPTSD to have an opportunity to have tools that totally make a difference and liberate them. That's genuinely important to me. So all that energy and inspiration, it gets really squashed down by bad eating. And when I eat well, it is liberated. And what I find in myself is I spring into action. So I eat in a way that gives me the energy and the brain power that I need to do what I'm on earth to do. No more dragging my feet. No more blotting out stress in a way that makes me more stressed. I'm facing my life. I'm taking responsibility for it. I'm taking care of the way I eat, which, by the way, does not come naturally to me. And the first time that I got bright, that's what we call it when we eat this way, I'm bright, I ended up transforming my little blog into a YouTube channel. And then I made my first online course and I created a website for it. And I did all of this in after hours. I had a day job. I had a video production company. It was very consuming. And so it was in my spare time that I started Crappy Childhood Fairy. When I got bright, I was able to turn it into a whole thing with students and income and a positive effect on the world within about a year. So during that first year, I also cleaned out my closets. I got rid of old clothes that no longer fit, which was most of them. I joined Toastmasters so that I could get better at speaking and being on camera. I remember, in my early videos, if you can ever find them, I'm sort of like this. I'm all wiggly. And in Toastmasters, I learned just stand still, look there, stop saying It was really helpful. But I just didn't have energy and courage to go take these bold steps until I was eating this way, and I didn't really see the connection at first. When I got bright, I was on fire. So when I fell away from this way of eating, it's not like everything collapsed at once, but everything took so much energy. And do you know that feeling? Sometimes you just jump into activities with enthusiasm and you know what you want to do, and you can't wait to get started. And sometimes you have to force yourself to do every little thing. And if someone's not waiting and counting on you or paying you to do it, you find a way not to do it. Well, that forcing is what it's like when I eat junk. When I don't, the procrastination fog lifts off of me and I get back in action. People with trauma sometimes overdo things. I have. And sometimes people with trauma can't get out of bed. So for procrastination, there's no fortune cookie wisdom that solves it in one sentence. It's just focused action that turns everything around. And the focused action needs to be sustained over time. So what is it that you're procrastinating on? What are you avoiding? Is it clearing clutter? Is it making a phone call to somebody you know you need to apologize to? Is it getting to the doctor so you can get a lump on your breast checked? Is it getting out of the house so that you can break a pattern of isolation? You can easily see how much is at stake when you don't have the power to do these things that are in your best interest. You know the right thing to do, but you don't do it. And the cost is not only to your health and your relationships and your career. The cost, when you know you should do something and say you'll do it, but you don't do it, is your sense of integrity. And that's what I was losing a little bit each time that I reached for those foods that gave me a little lift and then made me sluggish. My integrity. It's a vicious circle, isn't it? The more demoralized you feel, the more you lose the power to make a positive change. And this is a big reason why childhood trauma plays out in so many self-defeating behaviors until we heal. Changing my eating has taken many, many tries. I've failed, I've tried again, I've failed, I've tried again. But the thing about the way I eat now is that if I can just get through the first week or two, it gets so much easier. And it also helps that I follow a plan. I write it down every day, I follow that. I didn't make this up, it's a plan that's flexible, it's healthy, and it accommodates different ways that people like to eat, vegan, vegetarian, meat. There's a community around it, most importantly. That's a very important thing. I have a buddy within the Crappy Childhood Fairy team, and we talk every day on Marco Polo and support each other and celebrate all the good things happening because we are bright. I show her my food. I show her what I made today. I show her some restaurant menu where I'm struggling to figure out what I'm going to eat. And we just talk about stuff going on in life. And sometimes I show her like a new pair of jeans I got. It's a lovely, lovely way of supporting each other, and it makes all the difference for me. So we also have in my membership program for Crappy Childhood Fairy, which is all focused on, healing trauma, we have a good number of people who follow this same food plan, Bright Line Eating. A lot of us use the daily practice techniques and follow Bright Line Eating, and we find that they just fit together like a hand in a glove. Eating this way deepens the clarity and calm that I get in my daily practice. And I teach that for free, by the way. Link is always below in the description section. But doing the daily practice gets me regulated enough that I can even begin to eat intentionally and stick to a plan instead of like a raccoon who's found a picnic basket. The two go together. Since I've been bright this time, I've gotten caught up on so many things that have been like languishing on my to-do list, and reaching out to people I love who I knew I had been neglecting. I've painted my office. It's gorgeous. I'm taping this in a completely different room. It's much better set up for me. No more climbing over tripods and cables to get to my desk where I do all my desk work. So I feel good. I feel optimistic, and I feel clear-headed. I almost never recommend anything outside the Crappy Childhood Fairy program to my people here, to you. People ask me practically every day, and I'm just like, no, I only share things that I have found personally helpful, and this is one of them. It's remarkable. So the person who created it, her name is Dr. Susan Pierce Thompson. She's single-handedly moved the science of weight loss forward several giant steps. And did I mention I lost 10 pounds this month? Feels great. And like a lot of people, I came to this program to lose weight, and I discovered a really positive way of life. So this is my rare endorsement to you, people with CPTSD. If food and weight are an issue for you, I recommend checking out Bright Line Eating and trying it with the writing and meditation techniques that I teach. And these two together have genuinely moved my healing forward.